Yes, I am here. Forced updates, brand new phone, blah, blah, blah. Giving everybody a chance to come in here and I'll be right back. Not exactly sure who's here, who's not. That's why I'm just waiting till everybody sees it and whoever's going to show up shows up. I'm going to talk a bit more about the case I was just talking about when the live got stopped or whatever. In regards to Lisa Story and Jeffrey Zeiler and shit. Then I'm going to talk about a case that's, in my opinion, very similar to, in its own way, to Delphi, and that's like Scott Peterson. It's a decent example of what they had as evidence, what they didn't have. You know, a lot of shit they say, what they don't say. In some situations, it's certain details we don't find out until after a trial, or at least during a trial. That yeah, that's probably the best example because um, still to this moment, I don't think they technically had sufficient evidence to convict Scott Peterson, except for one detail. And I wouldn't really call it like evidence in the fact of, well, yeah, you'll see. So, like I said, I'm giving everybody a few minutes getting back in here because I saw other people when I finally got the phone back. I think I'm just gonna unplug the phone from the power source because it seems like we can't do updates without you being plugged in. Good, shut the fuck up and leave me the fuck alone. Shit. But yeah, and Zyler's trial, we literally had to sit there. I didn't get eliminated till the very end. I was probably going to be able to be a reserve or on the jury in that case. Um, Basically, on the last day, they were running us through all these questionnaire things one by one, and our answers and all this other junk. And just because I wanted to know more about the case itself, yeah, initially I was kind of cryptic on my answer to that one question, but I did tell the truth in due time because uh, I didn't want them to have some sort of reason to appeal or something like that because of a lying juror, blah blah blah. You know what I'm saying? So I did make sure I told the truth and then let it be on their shoulders whether or not I should actually be on the case. So, and they chose not to, which was probably the best idea since I knew the moment I closed the questionnaire book and all the other stuff that I went on the internet, learned everything I could about the entire case, which is exactly what they told you not to do. Well, then don't tell me what the damn case is, and I won't jump on there and figure it out. God. But yeah, before the questionnaire was even sent back or mailed back, the next day I probably had I know the who, the why, um, why they said that he probably did it, and how they caught onto him, and all this other shit. I basically knew a whole shitload of information, and that the main source of evidence they had in the case was his DNA all over the scene, all over the victims, all over the scene, everything. Um, Nobody's talking, so I have no idea whether or not the audio is good or not. What's up, TJ? How you doing? But yeah, my main reason, and I apologize for the having to restart the live. Basically, new phone, so every single night it starts running these fucking updates, and they don't give you a choice on whether or not you want to or whatever. I guess it's plugged into a power source. They're just running them whether or not. Or it did earlier. I have between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. And I'm like, well, shit. If it asks me at 2 and I'm still awake, no problem. I'll just put it up until around 6. And of course, it didn't give me that option. It just said, haha, bitch, and then shut everything down. And of course, you know how long it takes to update a phone. Just exactly right over long enough to where the stream gets ended on its own by a StreamYard. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and talk a little bit about the Jeffrey Zyler thing, because in itself, it's got some very I want I want to say um very intelligent or amazing facts or awesome evidence or all this other crap. No, it comes out of just straight up DNA. The reason I even talk about this one is well, yeah, it was like a year before the whole Wade Wilson shit in my county, which also Wade Wilson was, if you didn't know. Um, oh, this man testified on his own behalf. What you know? What's things about people that are being it's rare to hear a defendant testify on his own behalf. Usually, a lawyer will tell you not to do so and stuff. But apparently, he thought he could provide a logical explanation why his DNA was found at the scene. And this is actually, you can look this up because they have video of it, of him on the, testifying on his own behalf. And when asked what, he thought his DNA came from, no joke, guys, he literally says, well, the victim's mom, I must have had some sort of sex with her or whatever a year or more before the murders happened, but I'm not sure. And they're like, a year or more ago before? He's like, yeah, because I can't remember his exact reasons why, but I think he was with somebody. He's like, I ain't cheated on her, so I knew it couldn't have been lately. And they're like, okay, so why would you think the DNA would still be present on the sheets and all that a year after you supposedly might have had sex with the victim's mother? And no joke, you can look this up. Just look up Jeffrey Zyler trial. Um, he basically on the stand says because the victim's mother was a nasty slob or some shit. Nasty pig, I think is his exact words were. So yeah, he was not the brightest tool in the shed. Yes, I know I said that wrong, but I do that on purpose for a point. And he testified on his behalf. He didn't make himself look any bit of innocent whatsoever. He was indeed convicted on unanimously by the jury in both murders because, like in Wade Wilson's, every time there's a victim, the jury has to not only figure out if you're going to be convicted or not, but they have to vote on whether or not you are going to be given the death penalty. And I think they at least got to get 8-4, if I remember right, to get the death penalty on you. Wade Wilson almost got the death penalty for one, and then almost got away with the other one in its own way because the voting was so close on his two separate murders that he almost didn't meet the threshold for the Diane Rodriguez's murder, if I remember her name right. Hi, Shannon. How are you? But as regards to Delphi is concerned, and like I said, I'm trying to make this around the until some sort of new information comes up on either party's side or whatever, or anything is involved. It's proven. I don't see too much necessity to keep talking about it. Um, I've already stated what my opinion was. My opinion hasn't changed. The trial only let it be known that my opinion still remains the same, but at the same time, I don't think the statement met its threshold uh, on just anything's concerned. So, but yeah, I still think there's a couple of pieces of evidence that should be allowed in the Delphi trial and all that stuff, that you can't eliminate by the instructions through the poisonous tree, any of that stuff. And that still leads you to the point where, hey, Richard Allen might be involved in this. It does. It just does. A good representative of similar cases, like Scott Peterson. We all know who Scott Peterson is, I would hope. He was convicted, I think, in the 90s or some shit, or in the maybe in the 2000s. I can't remember what. Of killing his pregnant wife, Lacey Peterson. He was having affairs and all this other crap. Now, evidence was, if I remember correctly, and I did watch the prosecutors probably like a year ago or so for the rehashing of the case. There wasn't a lot, if not any, actual physical evidence they could use to actually say, hey, Scott Peterson did this. There were maybes and could be's and weird details and, huh? Who the hell is Tyler Robinson? Who is Tyler Robinson? And what are we talking about? Well, whoever this person is they're in my chat and they've already been blocked and everything by me. And I don't feel like I'm blocking them just so I can ban whoever it is. So, yeah, I won't believe anything they say because I do get a lot of trolls around here that do nothing but run their mouths. But yeah, I think the only piece of evidence that solely points to the fact that it was probably Scott that did it, because it would require, because we know that he had all these affairs, right? We know that he had multiple mistresses, well before Amber Fry, I think her name was. I have no idea who you're talking to. But yeah, they had no actual physical evidence. They had no crime scene. They had no none of that stuff. So yeah, that's why I can say, hey, it kind of sounds like Richard Allen because yeah, it's the truth. They don't have any physical evidence, but in the same way in Scott's case, in the same way in Richard Allen's case, aka using his car, he could be identified and should have been identified in 2017. In Scott's case, though, the police did catch on to the detail that really, and that would be the fact that somebody would have had to follow Scott, make sure he went to that specific body lake or whatever to go fishing, knew he was there, all the while Lacey's being murdered, mind you. Because, like I said, he had a ton of affairs. For all we know, he never technically had to even go to the lake that day. He could be off just screwing around. But it turned out he did go to the lake. And, you know, what if her body had been tossed in there and he could prove he wasn't even there? It would kind of be something that the real murderers would have to freak out about, right? Because they found her body and it had been dumped up around the same lake or whatnot that Scott had been visiting, which I believe was over an hour and a half away. What are the odds? I mean, astronomically, and the fact that anybody else probably would have done it and tossed her in that same body of water. Well, the only reason I can think of is, well, we want Scott to make it look like he did it. So, yeah, but like I said, you got to make sure he actually goes there. That means you got to drive an hour and a half and verify that he's actually there. That somebody can verify him being there, aka I think it was the Ducks guy or some shit, or someone else. But yeah, eventually they were able to do exactly that. But yeah, and the Delphi trial, it's basically that his car was there. Once you eliminate every single other car there as being a possible source of the person that is Bridge Guy, um, and I've asked people a million times that have been like, "Oh, that's not his car. That's a different one." I'm like, "Okay, so you can prove otherwise." Because I have actual mechanics that have seen the picture without any other information was able to tell me exactly which car that was, and they were correct. You know, certain details in the Delphi case, I literally went to the sources and my own, respect, to find out if there was an alternative explanation. Blah 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 blah. No, there wasn't. Oh, I thought. Well, for one, I don't even know who you are, but you said Tyler Robinson. I don't even know who that is. I don't know if that's a different case or. I mean, I don't think anybody I know invited you in, and if they had, they would probably be in here chatting or whatever. Which means somehow you just happen to get yourself here, which is fine. Or that you're probably a troll, which is fine too, because I'm used to it by now. So either way it goes. Did you come here wanting to find out about Scott or Rick.allen? Since my audience is partially paranoid, amongst other things, I can't really tell if the people that are watching that aren't talking are there because they don't know you, and that makes them very paranoid, which could be a reason. But at the same time, it's probably trolls. It's kind of like a mix of both. Which one, Richard Allen or Scott Peterson? Because just like Delphi, you're going to hear a bunch of people claim and state what they said was evidence, what wasn't, and find out that they're not telling the truth about a lot of it. Is there enough information? I said, which case are you wondering about, Scott Peterson or Richard Allen? Richard Allen would be the Delphi murders, aka Bridge Guy. Scott Peterson, I think everybody knows why or who he is and why he's been in prison and everything else. Scott, gotcha. Yeah, there wasn't really a ton of evidence at all that made Scott look guilty, in my opinion. I'm sorry, the people cheat all the time, but it's not a reason to kill somebody else. So, I mean, sure, you can cause it to be maybe mentioned as a possible motive or whatever, but it's not actual evidence of anything. They had no DNA. They had no. I think they had a piece of pliers that did have a strand or two of her hair in it. In my opinion, they were Scott's players, so that's not really big time definitive evidence in itself. That's just circumstantial. It was the fact that I think the son's name would have been Connor, I think, and Lacey's body was both dumped in the same lake that Scott would have been at that day. To me, that says everything about his. Somebody would have had to, because he's a cheating guy who likes to do it all the time. How did they know that, or as in the killers, if it's not Scott, how did they know that he definitively went to that lake that day. You know what I mean? Uh, they would have had to follow them. I think it was like an hour and a half away worth of driving. They had to go there, verify that he was actually there, make sure somebody else could verify that he was actually there. Then wait till he leaves while somebody else is, in my group, I guess, is killing Lacey and the baby. And then take the remains, both of them, all the way back to that lake, hour and a half away, and dump them there. What if Scott went there that day and just, I don't know, never went there, and instead he was up with one of his mistresses. They couldn't be sure of that, so doing that or whatever to make him look guilty would not have helped. You're from Tucson, Arizona. That's cool. I don't think that pertains to either case, but like Scott Peterson, if I remember right, that was California, wasn't it? But Arizona, it's kind of close to California, I guess. So. But quite a few people in Arizona, oddly enough. Yeah. Kate, you ever heard of the what is it? The toy box killer or whatever I think it was called. Oh wait, no, I'm wrong. That was New Mexico. Because that was Truth or Consequences, New Mexico, and I always get two mixed up. But yeah, I do think that Scott did it, whether or not the court or the state proved it. I don't know. I've gone over the case multiple times since the last time about a year ago. There isn't much that makes him look innocent. There isn't much that makes him look guilty, except for that one fact that the killers would have been dumping Lacey and Connor at the same lake the same day that Scott was there fishing, and that just that leads me to believe that it's highly unlikely anybody else committed that crime either. And the Delphi murder, if the cops had done their job from the get go, they would have had far more evidence than what they had at trial. They would have had his car's brain, which got wiped after 90 days after the murders, but they knew what the car was. By that, I think it was the second technical press conference. The first press conference they had was when the girls, I think, were still missing, I think. And then the next one after that is when they already know that they're dead and all that other stuff. Now, if you're going to ask me if whether or not I feel like the case that the state used was that enough to convict Scott Peterson, I don't know. I honestly don't know. Part of me wants to say no, part of me wants to say yeah. Because if you don't have that fact about the whole fishing thing or make this into some big conspiracy type thing, well, yeah, sure, it's possible. And if you can sit there and go, yeah, sure, it's possible, well, isn't that kind of reasonable doubt in the first place? In Delphi, it's much more simple. Between his own words, the details, and some other facts that I haven't yet to find anything. Being on this case for like 9 years now, that would eliminate Rick.allen from being involved or whatever. And the contradicting facts that everybody seems to offer, like, he wasn't even there at that time. Okay, where was he? He was at home. So there's evidence of that, huh? What do you mean? No, I mean actual evidence that he was at home at the specific time when they were being murdered. But it goes that way on both sides. So There's a lot of people offering untruths and not facts and claims, and also in the Lacey Peterson case as well, where they're like, she was spotted near a van doing this, that, and the other. No, no, she was not. Um, Witnesses said they saw large women, possibly pregnant ones, near in those places or whatever, and either they were verified not to be Lacey or whatever reasons or whatnot. Just like in Delphi, they're not going to just allow some information or facts into a case without some sort of evidence backing it up. And hell, I think in Scott's case, very similar freaking murders were taking place in other parts of the California and other places before and after this. That, in its own way, might have possibly, I don't know if I'd consider it third party evidence or whatever, but yeah, I still wouldn't have allowed the evidence that some other party did it in regards to most of the conspiracy crap that people talk about when it comes to Scott Peterson, because there's no other evidence placing somebody else there at the time of the crime. In fact, they don't even, you don't like gun, huh? Why are you scared? Or why don't you like gun? I mean, you lost me here. You don't like gun, you are scared. You're from Tucson. Are you talking to me or are you talking to somebody else in the chat? Which I should be able to see everybody because I'm like the admin here, so that's weird. Hmm. I really don't like it myself, honestly. Kind of from a redneck family, basically. By the time you hit the age of like 6 years old, you already know how to use a gun. So, and probably have already used it to kill something. Hell, I was born onto a damn pig farm, and people would show up on a daily basis and point to the pig they want, and you would have to go get a 22 caliber pistol. I don't know. The first time I did it, it was probably like 6 years old, and you'd shoot that pig, and then somebody else would hang it up and skin it, butcher it, and all that other stuff. Whatever. I make my kid, if I ever had a kid, do that. Probably not. Definitely not. But oddly enough, it doesn't seem to be any of the things that messed me up growing up, I guess. I do think for weaker individuals and such that they probably should have a gun. It's a safe way to protect yourself. Just make sure you have the training, the know-how, and somewhat experience to actually use that gun and not harm somebody that doesn't deserve to be harmed. I say that I'm from. We have the what's the damn thing called, self-defense law, and we also have the castle doctrine, which means if we're out in public or whatever, and some sort of threat or harm is made upon our lives, that we are legally allowed to, if we think that we might be harmed or killed in the process, we are allowed to open fire. I mean, yeah, people have tried to lie and use that defense and were proven liars, but as a whole, I think most of the states have that law too. Um, Now, the castle doctrine basically states that um, if anybody comes onto our property or in our house Basically, what we're supposed to do is if they haven't entered or broke into your house yet, we kind of go out and go, hey, you need to leave. Because the moment you see that, I guess they become a trespasser. And if they don't leave fast enough, our sheriff literally tells us on the news to put a magazine or two into them to remind them why this was a bad idea in the first place. See, down here we got a bunch of crazy ass sheriffs like Grady Judd and everyone else. If protesters are jumping in front of your vehicles, guys, you know what you got to do? Run them over. Huh? Yeah, you need to run them over with your vehicle. Well, I mean, stranger danger is really more or less just about little kids. And if you're a decent, suitable parent or whatnot, I do believe that most of the people, their kids would not be in scenarios or situations. Um, well, they should have been taught in the first place about don't talk to strangers, don't take things from strangers, don't do any of that stuff. Are there still plenty of people to this day that don't teach their kids that? Or I don't know, I guess the kid wasn't listening, sure. I mean, but then again, you got to go by the generations are concerned. I think years and years, like when I was a kid growing up, it was a whole different world than it is now. Uh, Things were not nice and cuddly and all kinds of stuff back then. There was bad people left and right, and I think my area had a few serial killers running around at the exact time, and I was even propositioned by one. So, and that was when I was 15. Was it 15? Hmm. I think I was about to be 15, so I would have been like 14. And the dude was creepy enough to where I yelled at my cousin and I hauled ass myself into the store where there was actual people there that might be able to help me. All this, mind you, even though I was like almost 15 years old, I was probably over 6 feet tall at this point in time and probably over 300 pounds. So whoever or whatever this guy was doing was creepy enough to where I needed to get the F out of there, even at that size. Mind you, the guy we are talking about, um, at the time, he would have been about almost 6'5" and like two something. So I don't know if it's the size or the way they're acting or what they're talking about or whatever one's concerned or all of the above. But there was enough there for me to go nope, and fight or flight kicked in. Um, Without some serious significant evidence that wasn't used in the trial, no, I don't think Scott Peterson should ever see the light of day as far as jail was concerned. Uh, as like Rick.allen's concerned, nobody can offer a decent reason why he couldn't have done it. And sure, if we're talking about before conviction, yeah, that stuff like that definitely matters. But when we're talking about post conviction, as you've already been convicted, that's a whole different story. First, we had to prove beyond reasonable doubt that he was guilty enough in the first place. Well, that's been done. Majority of his peers apparently or supposedly found him guilty. I am not the court, I'm not the appeal court, I'm not the judges, I'm none of that stuff. So if any of that part's untrue or whatever, that's some of them guys. I have reached out to both sides in regards to Delphi. Really, all three sides technically, because you have the side that thinks Rick.allen is guilty and that they proved it and this, that, and the other. I disagree with them They really don't want to come in here and talk about it, so it is what it is. Um, or the not side, aka the crankers. I've shared my views with them. We more or less get along in regards to that, but at the same time, once again, they can't offer anything that would prove otherwise. That would nullify his conviction so far. That's why I keep my ears and eyes out on every detail and every update and blah blah blah. And then you got the third part, um, the third group, third side, I guess. And that would be the conspiracy theory. Cops are in on it. The family's in on it. Da 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 angle. And once again, none of them can offer anything to prove him innocent or guilty edgewise. It's a bunch of theories and bullshit. And I know that for a fact because I helped think of them years ago. And the creators that are using it aren't even getting the facts straight. Because if you're going to come up with a bullshit theory or in regards to this, take somebody else's, at least learn what the actual theory is. I'm not even going to go through the entire reason why. It's 100% bullshit that some of these creators are claiming. Um, Honestly, it's just non facts. Things that they're saying it's going on just are impossible. And if the details they've gotten massively wrong, well, um, that's an easy piece of research. You can take 2 seconds and type it into Google and find out it's untrue. So it's more like they don't want your perspective on what the actual facts are. Basically, I want to say they used a bunch of circumstantial, weak, very weak evidence to see ties and links between certain individuals and groups and such that somehow led them all the way from Delphi, Indiana to Mexico and the cartels. And as I said before, I was basically the one that came up with this bullshit idea in the first place. And yeah, those ties and all that shit you can find if you look hard enough, but I don't know, we come up with maybe a 3 to 5% chance that all this bullshit is freaking yeah. You saw a cop last week. Um, in regards to what? Now, if you're here for Scott Peterson, what would you have to see the cops in regards to that, or was it none in regards to that, or about guns or whatever? I'll tell you what. I'm just gonna put a link in the chat and see what's interesting people show up. If you would like to come up here and talk, all you got to do is click the link I'm about to post. I already suspect it's just going to be trolls and losers, so. But it is what it is. But at least in Scott Peterson's case and all that other shit is concerned, there wasn't such weird cases so nearby it wasn't even funny that in its own way involved like the actual people that are involved. Okay, so you saw a cop, but you didn't call 911. Okay. That usually means that somebody else called or tipped you in for some reason. What did the cops come see you about? That would probably help. And sometimes cops just like to be a pain in the ass. I mean, I grew up poor, so it went from the pig farm to where we had to live in the ghetto. And if you're poor and white, it doesn't matter. They will pull you over in the middle of a rainstorm just to mess with you, so you get covered in water and stuff. So I wouldn't worry too much about 911 services themselves. If you somehow think you need them for some other reason, you should probably keep that a viable option in your head. Because okay, but what I'm saying is how do I put it? Um, in the Delphi's case, people have called the federal government, they've called the local law enforcement in Indiana and other states and all kinds of other stuff to do nothing more than to harass other creators and stuff like that. Um, at Everett, Washington. Hmm. Well, honestly, I come from a family we don't ever call the police. It's pretty freaking rare. It basically depends on the situation. And even then, we don't call 911. There's usually non um, what's the word I'm looking for? Non-emergency lines for your local police. But then again, from a big, massive county, even though it wasn't that way when I was growing up. So um, to have a whole bunch of people involved in some sort of conspiracy would be pretty freaking difficult. Not impossible, it's difficult to where I don't necessarily think I have to worry about my local law enforcement. Well, I think the last time I didn't call them at the time because I didn't even know when this was going on. But I think about a year ago or so, I had two friends, both female. They were both murdered in a robbery. One was stabbed, one was shot. Um, the cops did such a good job. Within 12 or 13 hours, they had both killers in custody. But then again, that wasn't the last time a friend of mine has been murdered either. So I haven't talked much about that one. I had a friend. Basically, he went by the nickname. I'm not exactly sure why. I didn't know him long enough to ask him this, but he went by the nickname of 6ix9ine. And I always wanted to ask him, hey, why are you pretending to be the same name as the Skittles haired rainbow loser, the rapper guy? But never got to that point. Apparently, one night he showed up at the place where him and a bunch of other people lived. They all claimed to be saying that he was being very combative and trying to get people to fight and stuff. And somehow it all escalated into the front yard where they claim that he, I guess, well, let's just say the story that they told the cops, I know for a fact is untrue because they told me the stories themselves. So the fact that later on I did find out that they all signed affidavits saying that the murder of 6ix9ine was self defense. Yeah, it was not. Uh, what they told me themselves was at first he had a knife, but then he threw the knife away, so the knife no longer became involved in the crime, which you'll find out later on that was changed. And I'm still debating on whether or not I should let law enforcement know because, like I said, my family's not big on calling the cops. But apparently, in the affidavit and shit later on that they all signed, um, they all claimed he was still holding the knife. But half the witnesses there that night confirmed what they originally said to me about him throwing the knife away or putting it away or whatever. He then went to go fight one of them who was holding a pair of channel locks in his hands um, because of him having the knife in his hands not even a minute before that. But even though they saw that or whatever, the best way I can say that it was explained to me was basically he threw the channel locks towards the guy, towards 6ix9ine. And with the way that the channel locks were thrown, they would have hit him around 6ix9ine's waist or whatever. And it was claimed that 6ix9ine got so low, which he's a dude that's taller than me, and I'm 6'4", but he had got so low that his head was at waistline, and the channel locks hit him in the head. Then supposedly he walked around for a while, I think about an hour or so before the ambulances pulled up. They took him away and arrested the dude they call Outlaw that threw the channel locks. And even though he was walking around and finding everything, 6ix9ine would die like a day or day and a half later, being hit in the head with these channel locks. Now, the charges at that point in time were upgraded from assault and all that on Outlaw to, I think it was second degree murder or manslaughter or some junk. And that's when everybody filled out this affidavit. Well, at least I think the 3 or 4 people that did so. Um, None of the people that saw that what really happened ever recontacted the police or offered to counter what was being said at the time and stuff. So as far as the cops are concerned, 6ix9ine ran at this guy with a knife in his hand. And in the process of doing so, to protect himself, Outlaw then threw the channel locks, which, once again, I didn't see any of this. This is what was told to me. And they accidentally hit him in the head. For all I know, they could have just smashed him in the head with the channel locks without throwing him or anything. And they're just making up these stories. I mean, if it wasn't for the witnesses that weren't on the same side as the other people, um, I would have to think that was a possibility. But everybody does seem to say that the channel locks were thrown at 6ix9ine. And I guess he was in mid-run going to attack, which I don't know. I've never seen this dude act mean or like a dick or anything to anybody. So it just seems weird that one night, randomly out of nowhere, he would show up basically trying to pick a fight with everybody in the house. I mean, albeit they probably all know him better than I do, and it was the fact that this was a house full of homeless people. Um, so I don't know, but it is weird. It's a lot of weird shit. And I know who Outlaw's family is around here, and kind of like my own. They're and, well, half of my family is criminals. The other half of my family is police. So I'm at least a half and half option when it comes to that stuff. But Outlaw, while related to me by marriage or whatever, his family is damn near 100% fucking criminals. They're all bad guys. And honestly, I'm not even sure if I contact the law enforcement and just be like, well, these people said otherwise, and you already have it in your notebook that those people were there that night. And then it becomes a whole bunch of he said, she said between a whole bunch of drug addict, homeless people that were saying, no, this is true. No, this is true. That it becomes toss up. But just in the fact that 6ix9ine alone might not have caused his own death, I don't know, or not have deserved it, I guess. I don't know. That kind of bothers me. But I don't like cops. So, yeah. But yeah, just like in Scott Peterson's case, nobody can offer me any legitimate reasons why he could or could not have been the person that committed the crime. Well, nobody in Delphi, which I don't know, the community is probably just as big, people online or whatever, none of them from all three sides can offer me a valid reason why he had to have done it or didn't do it. So yeah, I'll just point out the four little pieces of evidence that I have in the Delphi's case. It's like, yeah, all that stuff's legitimate. You can't eliminate it. It could have been better if you know. It's like, how do you sit there and say that somebody's definitively guilty, but at the same time, you've actually watched cases like O.J. Simpson, Casey Anthony. You'd have to be a true crime novice completely or whatever to call the little shreds of evidence left against Rick.allen. Yeah, it should have just basically been a hung trial or whatever. I'm not entirely sure why it wasn't in Delphi's consideration. But just like in Scott Peterson's case, this person has been convicted. They have been found guilty by a jury, technically, they say, of their peers. Um, they appeal it, and all those other people weren't able to really do anything but provide technicalities that, once again, do not eliminate these two suspects from being the actual killers in their respective cases. Yeah, I think they're talking about giving Scott Peterson a new trial based on the fact that there was some blood on the sheet found in the Peterson home that I think when they did blood typing or whatever on the case, it didn't indicate that it was Scott's or some shit. I'm not entirely sure. I just know it's blood on the sheet. And like I said, that's not saying much. They could test that blood and find out that it's Lacey's or Connor's or Scott's. And I think the most that you can do in that situation is it would help boost the fact of he might have done it. Period. I think the major piece of evidence in the Peterson case would have been where the Connor and Lacey was dumped. It requires a whole hell of a lot of effort and multiple people to figure out that Scott was actually there that day and all this other crap, which they would have had to do if they were trying to frame him. So that would have meant, hey, as we're killing these two people, including this baby, we're going to send one of our other buddies to go tail Scott to make sure he actually goes to the lake. It just sounds kind of like it's bullshit to me, and but logically, it's more likely to just say, no, Scott killed them, then loaded their bodies into whatever, and drove them to the lake with him when he went to go fishing, and then did just dump the bodies out. Right? Boom, common sense. I'm not saying the possibility of both isn't true, but I'm just going to say which one's more likely. And once you look at the Rick.allen and the Delphi case is concerned, sure, there could be a conspiracy going on involving the massive cartels. Um, Mind you, it's not the Sinaloa cartel that controls Vegas and all them guys. So if you're going to use that, please at least get the cartel right. For a period of time, I think CJNG, the new Jalisco Generation Cartel, ran biggest for a bit, but most of the time it's been the Gulf Cartel. So at least get the facts straight about the bullshit theory that you're throwing at people. Just telling you. I appreciate it. Because it's a known fact that you can actually look up information on which cartel controls the most of the criminal underworld in each state in its own. And that information is well known to the FBI and stuff, and they'll give it to you via Google. It's right there. And certain creators I've noticed pointing fingers at different cartels or whatever. It's like, I don't know. If you don't have the I mean, if you're going to throw a theory out to a bunch of people and claim it's 100% true, then you should at least do the research into said theory to be able to tell me the basic facts, not the basic information, basic facts about certain parts of whatever that you're using in regards to that theory. And if you can't even tell me which cartel is the right cartel for the specific area you're talking about, and I've seen the mistake made like 30 times now. And it's just like that cartel has never controlled that state ever. How could you make that kind of mistake? But yeah. Scott, I know, but recently they were talking about, man, he deserves to be in jail, mind you. Well, they do lack a severe amount of evidence or whatever. Yeah, that one piece of evidence is pretty fucking, yeah, it's damn near very important. And it's more the fact of there's no evidence pointing towards the robbers or people that supposedly Lacey saw breaking into houses or whatever. Okay, the theory is logical. I'll give you that. Any evidence putting them these multiple guys at the crime scene or whatever like that? No, none. Well, that sucks. Well, just like in Delphi, then we shouldn't have to hear about it in court because to make it a valid third party fucking possibility, you've got to at least be able to bring out some sort of evidence that the culprit was in, around, or damn near completely at the scene. Which in the Peterson trial, I don't even think they have a crime scene. So technically nobody knows. They assume it was probably at the Peterson house that she was murdered. Well, unless this new DNA evidence somehow proves that, which it could, but in my opinion, it doesn't somehow eliminate Scott either. So if you 100% learn that there is a crime scene, and that crime scene is uh, the defendant's own home, as far as I'm concerned, that just makes the defendant look even more guilty in the process. Richard Allen's sake, and a lot of people will say otherwise, and I'm tired of hearing what they have to say because these weirdos in the chat want to hear what they want to hear, and they're being told bullshit, and they're eating it up like it's actual truth. I hear that, oh, Richard Allen was such and such. He couldn't have been at the crime scene. Okay, Richard Allen said yes, that he indeed was at trails earlier that day. I think it was between 12:30 and 1:30 or some 12 and 1:30 or some shit. Okay, but the entire trial, him nor his lawyers offered any kind of logical explanation where he was the rest of that time, aka when the girls were being murdered. You would think that'd be kind of an important thing to do. I mean, you could use cell phone pings, you could use uh, surveillance footage from God knows where that you happen to stop along the way. There's a million different ways, but you know what? He offered exactly zero, nothing, because it was one of the biggest pieces of what the went on in that whole damn trial. Was like, okay, if he didn't do it, then where was he? And most people were like, oh, he went home. Okay, where's the proof of that? Yeah, I do believe that there's a possible proof in the geolocations, whatever geo tracking, whatever they call it, in regards to his phone is concerned. But at the same time, um, can they actually show that phone being used and active and all that if it was left at home? Because if it's been on standby or idle mode this entire time, that it doesn't say that he was at home at all. That says the phone was home, not him. But of course, we're not allowed to see that information. So if anybody claiming to have done so, I would probably not believe unless they were able to somehow prove that fact. But then again, I will add that yes, I believe, just like in Peterson's sake, that Rick.allen is indeed guilty. There is key pieces of evidence that people can't seem to contest. Because trust me, if they could, they would have come on here just to make me look like a dumbass or a liar. And the fact that they can't and they don't, I don't. You're talking about creators for like 20,000 plus or whatever. I offered to do it on their shows, and you think that most of these creators would jump at the case to just make somebody look like a dumbass and you know content, right? I've been declined by damn near all of them. And mind you, these are also the same creators that on a regular basis I have to comment on their post to tell them, I'm sorry, you got that detail wrong. This is the actual detail that you're thinking of. So until something happens, whether it be by the appellate court, the post conviction court, whatever, um, or somebody plans on coming up here and we're doing a show in regards to Delphi where Florida is concerned, since that's so close to Delphi, actually in the same county. Um, I mean, if people got questions they want to ask me about Delphi, I have no problem in answering them, since I've been here damn near the whole damn time since the original press conference. No, I mean, I can back up everything I've said as regards to anything is concerned. And that's probably why the creators and stuff, because I don't even consider myself a creator. I'm just a guy on here that comes on here and talks. There's no bells and whistles. There's nothing flashy or whatever like that. Um, I figure I'm not here to do this for money. I just come up here to give the facts and all that stuff to people, and believe. And most of the people that watch me are people that find them innocent because I'm not entirely sure why they actually watch me because I tell everybody from the get go that no, Rick.allen's probably guilty. I can tell you what points in the guilt direction, and I can tell you everything that points in the opposite direction. The problem is, most of the people that they watch, I don't believe even offer actual valid reasons with evidence why he couldn't have done it, but I do. And yeah, I do believe if something like the Scott Peterson trial and all that shit happened now, it wouldn't be like Delphi. It would be more like the whole Chris Watts kind of thing. But at the same time, it could have went the same way after the fact. Because I mean, shit. Look at the whole Deadpool killer trial here in Miami County of Florida. Women were asking for him to be let go because he was innocent, and just was solely because they thought he was pretty and they wanted to have sex with him. Um, Mind you, by that time he had already confessed and told very explicit details on how he committed these murders that no one else but the killer could have had. And they were still, I think they sent him a couple $1 million too, or maybe more by now. um, the only thing I saw on Google involving the Deadpool killer that was untrue. Wade Wilson was not from here. He was like from northern Florida or whatever, and not entirely sure why he was here in the first place, but that I know for a fact he was. He had been here a couple of years because I had seen him get thrown out of the same nightclub that he picked his first victim up that night in, because it was a club that we performed in quite a few times. And he had been thrown out because he was trying to sell drugs and all kinds of shit inside the club. Like it was that obvious, if you get my drift, that even somebody that's on the stage playing the instruments or whatever could see what he was doing and have him removed by security. But the problem with that is, if you don't somebody have somebody at the door that's paying enough attention all the time, then these people just keep getting back in. And the sad thing about Wade Wilson is he should have never been allowed back into the club. And had he had not have, at least the first victim would never have been murdered, and maybe the second one too. Um, I have a few killers that I'm probably going to talk about soon. Probably not tonight though, because they're going to have their own little weird lives or whatever that I have had. I guess the privilege and meeting and having to deal with in the past, and that would have been, like I said, I've covered it before, but I often delete stuff and everything else because people ask me to. But I'm gonna end up covering the Deadpool killer again, aka Wade Wilson. I'm gonna cover the Hog Trail murders in the Fort Myers 8, involving Daniel Owen Conahan Jr., who also I met. We're gonna talk about Paul Klein, aka Popeye, somebody else I also met. Probably Curtis Huff Jr., somebody else, once again, that I personally had to meet. And then, as far as killers are concerned, I think the only one left would be Kevin. Oh, shit, what's his last name? The group he basically ran was called the Lords of Chaos. And back in the 90s, when I was a teenager and whatnot, what's his name? Kevin something. But this dude had this little rinky-dink bunch of losers that he always had with him, and they always had guns and shit because his mom ran a freaking pawn shop. And I guess a teacher by the name of Mark Schwebees, the musical teacher of Riverdale High School, had saw them as a group breaking into the school and stealing some things. Um, and they, I guess, were like, "Oh no, we're not going to let him snitch on us." So basically, what they did was they borrowed a shotgun from Kevin's house. I'm trying to remember his last name at the moment, but when the teacher, Mr. Schwebees, answered the front door, they unleashed point blank shots at him from his front door, hitting him and killing him like nearly instantly. Um, Kevin, shit. Not Kelvin Sullivan. Kevin Foster. The group leader of the Lords of Chaos was a fucker named Kevin Foster. And as I grew up from about the ages like 13 to like 17 or so, since he's right about around my age, and I lived on the next road over, him being on, I think it was Lorraine, and me being on Muskegon. Uh, I used to fight with this asshole all the time because he was an entitled little prick. And I don't know, it's pretty shocking to find out what he did later on. They the Lord's Chaos also vandalized and arsoned a bunch of landmarks um, for this county. We had this old Coca-Cola bottling plant that had been up for well over 100 years, and they made out of bricks even, and they found a way using Molotov cocktails and shit to torch the whole damn thing, so we could never. They had to tear it all down basically. They were going to do the same to the winter estates for Thomas Edison and Henry Ford. the guy who created Ford vehicles, because they both had their winter estates next to each other, and they were both in Lee County back when they were alive. They were going to torch places like that too, but they torched a bunch of places beforehand, or vandalized. Um, yeah, most people do. Only time they say they recognize the Lords of Chaos was a documentary that basically bought the rights of the name from the Lords of Chaos case to use in their documentary to talk about the Swedish death metal. Um, Basically, there was a band called Mayhem, I think it was, that I'm trying to remember his name. Somebody named Vlarg Vikernes killed somebody in another band called Miss something or other. I think I know it started with M, but I can't remember what it was at the moment. And yeah, there was a massive trial. He ended up going to prison over the murder, and he's now back and free, and he's actually a YouTuber. Sure. Um, yeah, as far as Florida cases are concerned, I have yet to meet anybody that has anywhere near the information and knowledge pertaining to Florida cases. Albeit since anything that's like real recent, I think the last one I researched was what's her name? The little girl whose stepdad or whatever um, killed her, that he was having sex with her or whatever. But yeah, you can ask Florida questions. Go for it. About murder and anything else. I mean, I was born here, so I think I basically know, I guess. And for my, I'd say between here and the 4 to 8 counties in the immediate area, um, there's been a lot of infamous, notorious freaking serial killers and cop serial killers and all kinds of crazy, like cannibal kind of shit, all kinds of stuff in the immediate area here. And like I said, Wade Wilson, Jeffrey Zeiler, who I was almost on the jury for, Lord's Chaos, and anybody can verify this. If you just type in the cases I've mentioned, Jeffrey Zeiler, 1990 cold case out of Cape Coral, Florida, involving a Lisa Story, and I forgot the babysitter's name, but it was double homicide. And Lord's Chaos, one murder due to a pump action shotgun wound at the front door of the teacher's house. Also, Kevin Foster, after being locked away and finding out the rest of his gang had all snitched on him, they were working with his journalist or writer, I think it was, to have him be paid by Kevin's mother, and she knew all the details, mind you. That's why she's in jail now too. She was going to turn over a bunch of money to this journalist slash writer who was down and out on and shit, and he was supposed to go find a hitman and pay them to kill the former members of the Lord's Chaos. Thankfully, instead, the down and out journalist slash writer directly went to the Lee County Sheriff's Office and let them know exactly what was going on. And now Kevin Foster has been convicted of conspiracy to commit murder charges, and so it has his mother. So his mother, who was never in any trouble from the first murder and shit involving the Lord's Chaos or any of the crimes they committed. Oh yeah, Madeline Soto. That's the case I was talking about. That's probably the last Florida one I actually researched into. But But yeah, now his mom's in jail. I think she got like a 20-year sentence or whatever for her part in trying to hire somebody. Well, it might be less. I'm not sure. I got to check. It's been a long time since I checked into that. But yeah, his mom was convicted. I think she pled out for her part in trying to help her son. I'm not sure if he was anymore, if he was just trying to get revenge for them snitching on him, or if he possibly thought that if they were dead, that it would somehow have gotten him out of jail. Because it could have. But yeah, go ahead, ask some questions about Florida if you want. There is another massive city. I'm in Fort Myers, which is Lee County, Florida, which is southwest Florida. We're right on the Gulf. Um, Cape Coral and Lehigh Acres are both gotten pretty big. When I was growing up, they were tiny as hell. Now they have damn near 10 million in each city. But also in our county, it's half of Naples, Florida, which, if I remember right, Naples has well over probably around 20 million or more people just in that city alone, and it's massive. The other half of Naples is Collier, no, Charlotte County. Yeah, Charlotte County. But yeah, I've never found anybody that knows anything close to me when it comes to Florida cases, let alone, I don't know. I'm pretty, how do I say it? I'm not trying to be cocky, but I seem to be the one that I've ever found that knows the most cases worldwide. So, but yeah, I think there was, the case of like Arthur Good the Third out of Cape Coral. He was a self-proclaimed pedophile and jumped back in the 70s or the 60s. And he killed one boy here, and then while they were trying to figure out who did it, he hauled ass up north, and I think in Boston. Oh, well, my county's had cops here, the TV show, multiple times. We also had To Catch a Predator here a couple times too. So yeah, hell, I think one of the episodes cops I actually saw being filmed because they were at outside a tackle shop or whatever for people going fishing and stuff. And no Fort Myers, and you can actually see, I think, the car and shit that I've done. But yeah, I don't even think the cops in Florida know as much about Florida cases. I mean, each county seems to know exactly what they're supposed to know about certain individual cases. You know, there's like four counties that are pretty smart when it comes to like Curtis Huff Jr. or Daniel Conahan, and that's because he, you know, killed people in each of those counties. So, and both of them did. So, most people don't know about the Hog Trail murders or the Fort Myers 8 because you would think that any part of the United States, if there was 8 victims of an unsolved homicide of a unknown serial killer, that it would be a lot more talked about. But since the police are just like, hey, we think it was Daniel Conner, oh, everybody's just like, oh, okay. So they don't care about it. And the county does not want to pay the money to take Daniel Owen Conahan Jr. to court all over again, even though he's suspected in like 30 murders. Yeah, 30. He's convicted for one. They at least have enough evidence for at least two of them, as he was identified by a very specific witness as being the last person to see one of the specific victims of the Fort Myers 8 alive. Now, since you have a pretty good witness that sets Conahan with the victim, and that victim is one of the Fort Myers Eight, and they're called the Fort Myers Eight because they were all found in about a football field sized area. 8 victims skeletons were found. So if you could figure out who or what one of them is, and who or what may probably have done it, then that should tell you. I think they call it cluster killer or whatever. Somebody who, after they kill victims, I think Ted Bundy would have been considered a cluster killer because he liked to leave his victims at the same spots, so he could go back later on and do more messed up things to them, I guess, or just look at them, whatever. And Conahan Jr. also was the same way. But yeah, if you got some questions about Florida cases or whatever, go ahead and ask. Or anything involving serial killers, because that used to be everything I used to study before I went on to regular cases. Was anything and everything concerning serial killers, and that's not just the United States or Canada or South America. That's the entire world. But yeah, we used to have cops here quite a few times actually. Pretty sure if you just type into YouTube, cops TV show in Fort Myers or Cape Coral or North Myers or Naples, it's all the same county. So Lehigh Acres, um, I think all of them but Lehigh maybe had some sort of episode back then. Serial killer hacker. Um, what do you call hacker? Like, I don't think I've ever heard of an actual serial killer that was a hacker at the same time. I do remember that there's a sex slave killer. I think it would have been around your area. I'm not sure if it was Arizona or New Mexico or what, but they called him like this, the sex slave killer or something like that, or the basically he would talk to women on the internet, get them to agree to come be some sort of sex slave or whatever, get them to show up. Some of them have babies and stuff, but I do believe he killed their babies too, or he gave them up to be adopted by somebody else. Um, and over due time or whatever, he would end up killing the women that did show up. Serial killer hacker. What scam call on your phone yesterday? Uh, well, like I said, I don't think there's ever been, that we know of at least, a hacker that was a serial killer. So I just think like people like Ted Bundy, while they probably had the intelligence to learn things how to hack and all this other stuff, um, it was not one of the subjects they went for. Edmund Kemper probably could have easily been a hacker if he wanted to be, but by then he was too busy killing poets. Out of Arizona, I do believe that, like I said, unless it's a recent case. And usually I'm the first person that hears about, like, I think the last time I heard about an alleged serial killer, because they haven't been convicted yet. Where was it? Shit. They were talking about the New England serial killer, which I don't even think at the moment is an actual serial killer, but it does sound like you're talking about the slave guy. Shit, what was his name? I don't think he was any kind of hacker though, or whatever. I just think he manipulated his victims, like social media or whatever the hell that was that they had on the internet. And I wouldn't really call him a hacker for that. He probably just gleaned the information or got the information off the women themselves before they died. I'm trying to remember his name. What the hell was his name? I mean, yeah, but there's been plenty of killers that were on the internet, and plenty of them that um, technically could have had the skills or whatever to be a hacker, but there was none that were hackers and serial killers. I think Dennis Rader is probably the most well-known case involving computers and shit and serial killers, because he was caught using a hard disk from his local churches where he worked at. I guess he was a volunteer, and they were able to find the old data on the desk from him deleting it. It wasn't actually deleted, so then they knew which church to go to. And once they got there, everybody basically said, "Well, the person who's involved with the computer and stuff and all that, that's always Dennis Rader." You know, what year is that? Well, what do you remember about this case in Arizona? Maybe that would help. Or does it sound like the guy I just mentioned, basically the sex slave killer guy? One second, I'm gonna go check real quick. Hmm. Hmm. Famous serial shooters: Brian Patrick Miller, Corey Morris, Samuel Little, Dale Hosner, and Samuel Dieterman. They were the shooters. It's a zombie hunter. Huh? Two young women. This was really savage. The crackhead killer. Wow. Yeah, there is no such thing. No, I went to go search Google because I was waiting for you to type in, and I thought it'd just be faster. Um, I think the most widely known cases out of like Arizona would be like those the shooter guys, Dale Hausner and what's his face, the Gallegos, Samuel Little, just like Florida. He had a couple of victims in Arizona, but mainly it just seems to be a bunch of uh, dudes that like to kill sex workers. What do I say about what? I there is no such thing as a hacker serial killer. That's what I say. There's just not. Um, I thought that maybe there are like a couple from Arizona that call themselves the sex slave killers or whatever. And like I said, that those were the Gallegos or whatever. I still can't remember who the hell I was talking about because it came over here too quickly or whatnot. But it might have been Texas, but somewhere in that immediate area, there was a guy, the internet slave killer or whatever the hell his name is. What? Because most people call people hackers. Are you going to be safe at home? Probably. I would just an alarm, keep your doors and windows locked, and you don't like guns, but maybe it's something that you need to work on getting over the like or dislike about. Or you could find a guy or something. I know that sounds worse, but there's a guard dog, um, house security, um, a gun, or have somebody living in the house that would help protect you. That's the best four things I can say for security. If you get an actual trained guard dog that knows how to do its job on command, um, but a lot of people won't even break into your house because they hear a big nasty German Shepherd or something in there that just want nothing to do with the place. But make sure you get one that's actually trained or have them trained because some people are still willing to try to do things, and it doesn't necessarily mean that a big street dog is enough to scare them off. They want to make sure that he's actually willing to bite the shit out of them, and that's why your dog should be trained. Don't like guns, but that's all. That's the best option. Number two is get a gun and be well trained with it. Somebody breaks in, I'm not sure how your laws go, but in Florida, if they're breaking into our house, we can unload on them and we are fine. If it's out in the yard, we do have to quickly tell them to leave. So they quickly have the option to go. If they do not, then we can once again unload on them. That's what the castle doctrine is all about. I love that law. Um, yeah, guns are very good, especially with the training and stuff that's widely available for them. Or the last option, as I said, house security, like ADT or something like that, would also help, including cameras and shit from like Ring cameras and stuff. So yeah, cameras, um, alarm system, gun, guard dog. Not a dog that looks scary, a dog that is scary because if they're told the right command that they're going to go and try to eat that person's head off. That's a good dog to have. Yeah. Other than that, a gun, somebody there living with you, um, that's willing to help keep you safe would be another option. Home security system would also be an option. Like I said, the cameras and shit, another option. That's probably the best thing to do. Is, I mean, if you live alone or whatever else, um, and if you do let somebody else come live with you, make sure that you 1,000% properly vet the person and all that to make sure that they're not a bad person. I understand that, but in every option, those four things are still going to be, or 4 or 5 things are still going to be your best um, bets. Like I said, the alarm system, you can use, and make sure you get into a habit of turning it on and turning it off, turning it on, turning it off. So you don't accidentally leave it off, and then one night when you finally do get your house broken into, something bad happens because you have gotten the protection. There's a difference though between having a dog, which yeah, I've seen some scary looking dogs, but if I were to break into the houses of the people that own these dogs, I and I didn't know the dogs, I'd be scared at first, but upon second look, I'd noticed that the dog was very easy to deal with, and yeah, you can have the most vicious. Do you have kids? Because if you don't have kids, the best, yeah, if you don't have kids, I'm gonna tell you right now, the best forms of protection against yourself are cameras, alarm, gun, dog. That's it. All right, now in the mobile home, you're really not gonna get an alarm system. Really isn't gonna help. Really not be able to do anything for an alarm system there. But you can get the whole camera stuff, the ring cams. They have a floodlight camera. Yeah, like it has floodlight that's motion activated and stuff that you can point up high in the air, and it'll show you on your phone and on your TV exactly what's triggering the thing and stuff. But you can turn the sensitivity up or down with it at the same time. But as far as a mobile home is concerned, you want a well trained a dog, gun, and well, since it's a mobile home, it's kind of hard to move somebody else in at the same time because there's only a certain amount of limited space. So, but yeah, an actual trained dog, and the camera systems. That's about it. Um, I did verify there are no such thing as an actual hacker serial killer. And in fact, most, if not damn near all the cases, I think the major one that involves technology as a computer is concerned, um, there was like the Weepy Voice Killer in a different state. There was Dennis Rader, as I already explained, and gosh, I think his name is Robert something or other. He was a truck driver, serial killer who often sent phone calls and shit, like in the Long Island serial killer case, how the victims' families would get calls taunting and everything else after their loved one had long been missing. The killer would still keep calling them. The Weeby Voice Killer and this Robert, I can't remember his last name. The trucker also both called their victims and stuff over and over again. And their cases involved computers because each of them sent a map that they printed out on MapQuest or something to. You got a Gooter Shack? What the hell is a Gooter Shack? Well, if you live in a cheap mobile home, you can expect really much to be able to do to protect it. Probably why most of the people that live in them have guns. Well, if you have no other questions about Florida or anything else is concerned, I'm going to go ahead and end this live. Everybody have a good night. Take care. And see you next time.